Hey there, welcome to episode 206 of Mike's Collection. I'm Mike, and the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about today is actually nothing really in particular. This is going to be one of those odds and ends episodes. I still have a whole pile of Marvel Legends that I plan to talk about soon, and a whole bunch of Star Wars Black Series, so I am going to do some focused videos on those in the coming weeks. But today, it was supposed to be one of the kind of catch-all videos that lately I usually bring my buddy Chad in for these episodes, where we just kind of, shoot the shit and talk about what new toys we've gotten and talk about some general toy news. Unfortunately, Chad has COVID, and so he's homesick. He's fine, but, he's kind of keeping his distance for a couple of days until it passes by. So here I am by myself again for this episode, and I kind of wanted to talk about my trip that I just took to Toronto recently, and I didn't want to wait too long to talk about this because then it starts to feel like just dated. So I could have probably sat down and done one of my Marvel Legends or Black Series videos, but I decided to do this kind of general video, which normally I would have Chad here to bounce this off of, but I'm just going to bounce it off of you. So I hope you enjoy my odds and ends. So, as I would have mentioned in my last video with Chad, is that I was heading to Toronto. So, I live on the east coast of Canada in Nova Scotia, and I don't get to Toronto very often. The last time I was there was about 20 years ago. The reason that I was going, so it was me, my wife Vanessa, my best friend Miguel, and his girlfriend Julianne. So we were traveling there to go see the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Now, I'm not somebody that usually will travel for a concert. I am a big fan of music and live music, but I know it's a lot of money for, airfare and hotels and tickets and everything to go see a band. So I usually kind of bide my time and wait for bands to come to me. But in this particular case, it's been a couple of years, with the whole COVID thing, that there haven't been a whole lot of concerts going on. Bands had to stop touring. So this was a big tour for the Chili Peppers because it was the original lineup back together again. And Miguel wanted to go. And we weren't sure if we wanted to commit because I'm a Chili Peppers fan, but not a huge fan. But the opening band was The Strokes, and I am a huge fan of The Strokes. So is my wife. So we're like, okay, so this is The Strokes and the Chili Peppers. Let's do it. So we committed to go to Toronto. We were only there for about 4 days. But once we knew we were going, we started looking into some other things that we could do while we were in Toronto. And one of the things that was at the top of my list was going to the Silver Snail comic book store. So the Silver Snail, I've only been there once. Because when I used to actually live in Ontario. I lived in a place called Borden, which is kind of it's not in Toronto, but it's close-ish. So I was in Toronto a fair bit when I was a little kid, but that was actually before I even collected comic books and everything. Like, we're talking like kindergarten aged. Anyway, so when I did go back to Toronto 20 years ago, it was the one and only time I've been there as an adult and as a comic book collector. So I did my rounds and I went to a couple of different comic book shops in Toronto on that particular visit. And the other stores I went to weren't really anything notable. I don't really remember anything about them, to be honest with you. But I went to the Silver Snail, and I thought it was awesome. It was like 2 floors. It was huge. They had more back issues than any local comic book store that we have out here on the East Coast. And they had so many toys. And it wasn't just like the current action figures. They had stuff from years prior, things that were really hard to get. And I was just so excited to see this stuff. And when I say 20 years ago, so we're talking like right at the turn of the century here, even the internet was not what it is today. So you didn't know all the toys that were out. I remember going to the Silver Snail and seeing toys that I didn't even know existed. I'm being like, oh my God, what is this? This is like some weird store exclusive that I'd never seen before and I didn't know about. And I remember I spent a small fortune at the Silver Snail buying all kinds of, back then it was mostly Toy Biz Marvel figures. So I had a whole bunch of that stuff. And I brought it all home with me. And so anyway, I have very fond memories of the Silver Snail. And so when I knew I was going to Toronto, I was like, that's one of the first things I want to do. So we went there on Saturday, and I gotta say, I was pretty disappointed in the Silver Snail. For one, it's a different location than where it had been when I visited it before, and they have definitely downsized. I wouldn't really say the shop was much bigger than the stores that we have locally here. It might have even been smaller than some of the local stores that we have here. Its toy selection was pretty underwhelming. They didn't really have anything old and mind-blowing. Some of that might just be because of, the age we live in now. I obviously wasn't going to come across toys that I didn't know existed, because I kind of know all the toys that exist nowadays. But yeah, they didn't have anything old or particularly rare. They had lots of NECA figures and McFarlane DC figures and things that I can buy here locally. So I did buy one figure there, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And I was glad to find it, because I actually hadn't seen that figure anywhere locally. I knew it was around. I knew I could probably ask my local comic book shop, Strange Adventures, to order it in for me. Or I could have ordered it online at Big Bad Toy Store, which is where I buy a lot of my toys. But seeing it there at the Silver Snail, for one, it gave me an excuse to buy something, because I always like to buy something when I'm visiting a new shop. But it was also something that I was actively looking for, so it saved me the trouble of having to order it online or wait for my shop to order it in. And they also have a lot of back issues, but not nearly as many as I remember. And I don't buy a whole lot of back issue comic books, because I buy so many current ones. But when I do have the opportunity to go into a shop like this, I thought, well, maybe I can fill in some holes in my collections. So I do have a list that I carry around on my phone of some old Spider-Man comic books I need. And I found one issue of Amazing Spider-Man that I needed. So that was a little bit of a letdown. So what I ended up buying is I bought a big stack of about 15 Spider-Girl comic books, which, if you're not familiar with those, that is kind of the tales of Spider-Man's daughter from an alternate universe. So a comic book set 20 years in the future, where Spider-Man and Mary Jane are married and they have a teenage daughter, and she inherited Peter's powers. And it's a comic book that was out in the late 90s, early 2000s, so it's 20-year-old comic book. I have a few of the issues from back in the day when it was first published, but I didn't collect the whole run. So they had some of those, so I bought them. So that was my adventures at the Silver Snail. I was going to shoot some video, but it was sort of so small and awkward, and the clerks were kind of right there, that I felt a little awkward panning around and taking shots. So I snuck a couple little quick shots of the toy area, but it's hardly worth showing you. I'll show you the pictures. So anyway, I don't want to give the impression that the Silver Snail isn't a good comic book / toy store. If you're in Toronto, go visit it, sure. But I think I just had in my mind, I built it up as being this big, awesome superstore of comics and toys, and really it wasn't anything special. It was kind of similar to shops that I have here on the East Coast. So anyway, so that was the Saturday. What else? And then I also went to GameStop. I found 2 different GameStop locations kind of in the area we were staying in, and I wasn't expecting much from them, and sure enough, they weren't anything special either. They carried all the same toys that we have at the local GameStops. I did actually buy one Marvel Legend figure from the GameStop there, which was Circe of the Eternals. So it was one of the MCU figures. And I don't typically like MCU figures. I like MCU movies, but I'm more of a comic book guy. So when it comes to the Eternals, I didn't really buy many of the figures from that movie. I would rather have comic book versions of them, but they're not very popular characters. I don't know if we're ever going to get comic book versions of them, especially because the movie wasn't super well received, and I don't think that line of toys was super well received either, so I can't really imagine Hasbro, being chomping at the bit to put out comic accurate Eternals. So I never bought Circe when she first came out, but they had her marked down from the regular price, which is $30 here in Canada. They had her half price for $15. So I bought Circe. I'm not going to bother showing you here today because she's in my pile of Marvel Legends, but I'm just going to do a full Marvel Legend review, in a week or two. So yeah, that was it for the toys that I bought. Another place that we went that was really cool was this restaurant called Storm Crow Manor. And this was not a place I had heard of before, but like we kind of were Googling cool places to eat, cool places to visit, before we left. And my wife found this place and she picked it for me. She was like, this looks like a place that you would want to go to. There was 2 restaurants that she found. One was actually called Figures, and the theme of it was action figures. So she thought I would really like that one. But when I actually looked at the website, it didn't look like it was all that figure based. It actually looked like it was kind of a classy, fancy restaurant with a couple of, artwork from comic books and maybe a couple action figures up on the bar and stuff. But not, it wasn't like my room here full of toys or anything. So we ended up not going to Figures. But we went to the Stormcrow Manor place, and it was a cool restaurant. The food was good. And, the drinks were good. Some cool, funky drinks. And the restaurant was kind of broken up into various themes based around different sci-fi movies and stuff. And one of the things that I thought was pretty neat is we were led up to our table. And as soon as we sat down, I sat down right next to this poster. So this here, if you guys watch my videos regularly, you see this behind me all the time. And I don't know if you even know what it is, but that is a Pacific Rim poster that's supposed to look like an old World War II propaganda poster. And where that came from is I bought the the big hardcover book, The Art of Pacific Rim, and it came with 2 folded up posters in there. And I took one of them out and I mounted it and get it framed here, and so that's what I keep behind me there. But I don't think it's like a particularly common poster. It's not like this artwork was really used to promote the movie or anything like that. Again, it's like a fold-out poster from an art book. It's kind of obscure, but they had this thing framed right in the booth where they sat me at, so I thought that was kind of neat. And then I was sitting there at my table, and I was noticing all the neat little things they had up. They had all kinds of framed posters from all kinds of movies, things like Godzilla, old Universal monster movies, kind of like B, science fiction movies, just a whole variety of things. And every time I was looking around, I was like, oh shit, I didn't see that before. Oh, I didn't notice that before. At one point I looked up and they had a bunch of X-Wings, models from Star Wars hanging from the ceiling. And I went to go take a picture of them, and then I saw that, oh, they have TIE fighters up there too. That's cool, and I'm taking pictures of those. And then I pan over and I realized right above my table, hanging above me, is this gigantic model of the Millennium Falcon. It was about as big as our table. And I was like, how did I not see that when I first came in here? And there was also a doorway right next to our table as well that led into the kitchen. And I saw that there was lights around the door, but I'd been sitting there for 20 minutes before I realized that there were lightsabers. So they were actually replica lightsabers with the handle, and it was all lit up. So one side of the door had a green lightsaber, the other side had a red lightsaber. And I was like, oh, check that out. And so I actually had to get up from the table at one point just so I could go around the restaurant and take pictures of the place because it was so neat. And it was a little awkward because, some people were in booths and I was going into the booth taking a picture. And I was like, do you mind if I take a picture of that stained glass window behind you? Because they had some stained glass pictures from different sci-fi films. So I got a picture of the Darth Maul stained glass window that they had there. The whole restaurant itself kind of looked like a big haunted house from the outside. But yeah, you go inside, they had a full-size replica of Han Solo in carbonite that I got a picture with that. They had the Zoltar machine from the movie Big. They had, there was what's the word I'm looking for? There were booths that were kind of themed after RoboCop and, just movies like that you wouldn't think, wow, they actually have a booth themed after RoboCop here. Star Wars and stuff is one thing, but they had some really obscure paraphernalia. They had signed pictures from all kinds of celebrities that must have come through there. Another thing they had that was really cool is they had all these mounted heads that looked like taxidermy heads on the wall, but it was creatures from science fiction. So they had this big thing from Dungeons and Dragons. They had a Rancor monster from Return of the Jedi, his head mounted on the wall. Anyway, it was a super cool little restaurant. And they actually had some vending machines down by the front door. And they had all these little oddities that you could get in the vending machine. And one of the things they were advertising was erotic dinosaur toys. And I'll show you the image. I took a little picture of the machine here, and I was like, I wonder what the hell those are. But it required a toonie, and I didn't have a toonie to put in there, so I was like, that's going to bother me. I'm going to wonder what the hell an erotic dinosaur toy is. But my wife, she got me the $2, and she got me the toy, and they came in this little bag here that says Dino Couple, and maybe I'll show you a little closer look at what my erotic dinosaurs look like, so maybe I'll splice that in here. So here is the Dino Couples bag that I got out of the vending machine, and I was curious if I was going to get a couple of dinosaurs posed in, explicit positions, doing some naughty stuff, but what I got was this little, I think maybe a duck-billed dinosaur. So a very rather unassuming little plastic dinosaur toy, and this Stegosaurus. So again, nothing naughty or erotic about them at all. They are just standard little dinosaurs, the kind of thing you would get at the dollar store. You'd probably get like 20 of these in a bag for $1. So the fact that they have kind of used their marketing to put these together as dino couples, pitch them as, erotic dinosaur figures, and then sell them to me for $1 a piece, that's a good little racket that they're running at Stormcrow Manor. But anyway, regardless, I still think it's a fun little souvenir, and I love little dinosaurs like this. Like, I used to have a huge bin of these little plastic animals, whether they were dinosaurs or farm animals or jungle animals. Like, when I was a little kid, I absolutely loved this stuff. I had little floor mats with rivers on it, and I had like little fences for zoos and little plastic trees and everything like that. So yeah, I do have a fondness for these little dinosaurs. These guys are cute. I do like the paint job on them. I don't know if you can really tell, but it's kind of this metallic-y paint. So they've got this kind of little sheen to them there. So this guy's kind of a nice pinkish purple on white. This guy's nice green. And there you go. So those are my dinosaur toys. Now, you can maybe get them into some semi-erotic positions, but yeah. And I don't know what I'm going to do with these guys. I might stick them on my shelf somewhere, maybe in a position like that. Something like this. Anyway, so there you go. You don't have to spend your $2 if you go to Stormcrow Manor because you know what you're getting. But to be honest, these guys are totally worth the $2, so why not go for it? So anyway, other than the restaurant and the comic book stores and the GameStops, the concert was excellent. The Chili Peppers and the Strokes put on a really good show. I shot quite a lot of footage of the concert. If you're interested in seeing that, you can find it on my channel. I just posted it like a week or two ago. I would splice some in here to show you, but usually if I post footage with like music in it, I get a copyright notice from YouTube telling me that, I might get in trouble for posting this video and that I'm not allowed to monetize it and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, I wouldn't want to put in a clip of music here and then have this video get pulled off of YouTube or anything. So I'll show you a couple of still images of the concert. Some of the really nice ones my buddy Miguel took because I had a seat on the floor, but he was in the general audience, kind of right up front, so he could push his way right to the stage. So he took some really great photos that I'll share with you guys. Yeah, Strokes were really good too. They only played for 45 minutes, which was kind of a bummer, but still, check out my video. I'm not going to say it's the best quality video out there, but if you want a little taste of what it was like to see this concert I went to, go check it out. I've actually seen a few bands recently since I came back from Toronto. I went and saw a couple of Canadian bands, Metric and Deer Rouge, and I posted videos of those on my channel as well. I would, if you're not familiar with those bands, I would recommend checking them out, especially Metric. It was an excellent show, and I've got a lot of good footage of that concert. So yeah, check that out as well. So yeah, it was an eventful couple of weeks. Is there anything else to talk about? One other thing I did on the trip that was pretty cool. Not really toy related, so bear with me if you're just here for the toys. But on our first night there on a Friday, we went out for dinner, just me and Vanessa, because Miguel and Julianne, they went off to go see a Jack White concert. We had opted to skip Jack White just because we knew we were already going to the Chili Peppers, and we didn't want to spend our whole trip at concerts, even though we do enjoy Jack White, but we saw him a couple of years ago. Anyway, so me and Vanessa were out at a restaurant, and a great restaurant, and it was called Earl's, I want to say. Anyway, we asked the waiter there, where should we go? What's a cool little bar that we could check out after dinner? And he said we have to go to this little bar up the street. I think it was called Coffee, Oysters, and Champagne, or some combination like that. Champagne, oysters, and coffee. I don't know. Anyway, so he said you got to go there, and it's a speakeasy, and there's a password to get into the back room. You got to tell them you want the champagne tour. So we're like, okay, cool. So we go up to this bar, and it didn't look like much. Like, it looked like kind of a nice, classy little bar, but it looked almost like like a coffee shop or something at street level. It was very open. The front was all glass. There was lots of people in there sipping on, fancy drinks and stuff, but it looked a little high end, and we were like, okay. So we went in there. The waitress came to our table, asked us if she could get us a drink. We said we'd like the champagne tour. And then she was like, oh, well then come with me. She brought us into this I want to say wine cellar. It was like a room that was all lit up with all glass shelving with all these bottles of champagne and wine all around us. And she told us some story about how there was used to be a hotel that stood on this lot, and it was torn down. And when it was torn down, they found one bottle of champagne still standing. And she pulled the champagne bottle down, and then the walls opened up like Batman style, and we had to go through this brick tunnel, and we go back there, and it was super cool. It was kind of done up like Prohibition era, style little speakeasy. So everybody was in kind of like period costumes. They were serving up drinks with like dry ice on them, so everything was like smoking. There was like a cabaret show back there with some burlesque and all this stuff. It was super cool. We had a great time there. Then what was kind of funny is after the show, we were walking home, and Miguel called us, and he was like, where are you guys at? We're just leaving the concert. Do you want to meet for a drink? And we said, nah, we're done for the night. We're about to go back to the hotel, but you should check out this place, Coffee, Champagne, and Oysters. And you give them the password, and it's really cool. You go into the back room. And I think we were maybe a little too drunk when we were giving him the instructions. So, the next morning we saw on Instagram that Miguel had gone to Coffee, Champagne, and Cigarettes. Coffee, Champagne, and Oysters. Anyway, he was tagged himself there. And so we called him and we're like, did you go there? And he's like, yeah, but it was kind of lame. It was nothing special. And we're like, well, did you ask for the champagne tour? And he's like, no, I didn't want to drink champagne. Then we were drinking beer. And we're like, well, that's the whole point, man. You got to go to the back room. That's what makes it cool, is going to the speakeasy. And then he was kind of cursing us for not being more clear when we explained it to him. So anyway, that was kind of funny. And that was actually one of the highlights of the whole show. Another thing I almost forgot is for those of you that are regulars of the show, a while back I did a review of a Marvel Legends set of the Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club being a group of X-Men bad guys. And they're kind of like a secret society type of thing. And when I got that box set in, I thought, you know what, I should call my friend Scott and do a joint review with him. Because my friend Scott, who used to live here, but a few years ago he moved to Toronto, so I never get to see the guy anymore. Anyway, so he moved to Toronto, and he started a Instagram and a YouTube channel called Great Expentations, where he talks about old issues of the X-Men, and he shares images from X-Men comic books. He's very funny. If you don't already follow his Instagram or his YouTube channel, I recommend you do. It's very informative and very funny. Scott's great at this. His videos there's a lot more fancy editing, and he's got really good voiceover and all that stuff. So yeah, check out his channel. So yeah, if you watched my video of the Hellfire Club, you would have got to meet Scott, and hopefully you enjoyed that video of us doing that review. So anyway, I was in Toronto, and I thought I should touch base with Scott and see if we can hang out with him. Now, he was actually doing a drag show, so we went to his drag show one night, and that was a good time. I'll put some video of it in here. Hopefully the audio on that doesn't get me in trouble with YouTube. But yeah, it was a good time. So overall, really good time. I'm glad I went, even though it was only 4 days. It was a bit of a whirlwind. Lots of fun stuff. Okay, so I've already talked about the dinosaurs. Another thing I want to talk about is the figure that I bought at the Silver Snail. So this guy is kind of topical, I guess, in some regard, because in recent episodes, I've talked about the Death Dealer, which is a Frank Frazetta character. I won't get into all the background about it again, but I recently bought a Death Dealer comic book from the 90s, which was signed by Glenn Danzig, who wrote the issue, which was pretty cool. And this Death Dealer character, he hasn't had a comic book for many years, a couple of decades maybe, but a new comic book company has just recently started publishing Death Dealer comic books again, and so I've been buying those. So Death Dealer has kind of been on my mind. He's this old character that's kind of been revived recently. He's just this big barbarian character. Very cool. So I knew that this company had made an action figure of him, and I've already opened it, you'll see, but here is the packaging. I think I took some images of it before I opened it up. If so, I'll splice them in here. So you see here, there's some kind of comic book art there. It says the Death Dealer. Now, if you look in the corner, that is the logo. It looks like it says Toy Biz, which is a very familiar logo to toy collectors, but it actually says Fig Biz. So it's kind of like a knockoff of the Toy Biz logo. And yeah, so the artwork on the card is, it's pretty basic. I find this a little odd, actually. So you'll notice there's a bio, or at least what you would think would be a bio. But I'll read you what it says on the back of the package here. This demonic seductress is a primal force as old as sin, a resourceful enchantress, preying on the weak to enhance her power and taking great pleasure in their ritual sacrifice. Risen from the fires of hell itself, this dark mistress wreaks havoc on the world, corrupting the souls of all she enslaves. And you're kind of like, what are they talking about? This is not a girl character. I think they're talking about the helmet itself is supposed to be possessed, and the demonic helmet possesses whoever wears the helmet. But that is not clear at all from this packaging. It's rather confusing. So, I don't know, a weird choice on the packaging. Anyway, so here's the figure. So this is what I bought from the Silver Snail. I knew this figure was out there. I knew it existed. Like I said, I was considering ordering it online. I'm glad I didn't have to because they had it in store. So, yeah, why don't we flip things around and we'll take a closer look at that. So here is a closer look at my Death Dealer figure from Fig Biz. So this guy is about, I don't know, maybe about 5 inches tall, something like that. Just for some scale, here he is next to a standard 3.75 inch reaction figure. Here he is next to a 6-inch Marvel Legend figure. So yeah, I would say that he clocks in probably maybe 4.5 inches, something like that. So he doesn't really scale that well with anything else in my collection. He's too small to pair with 6-inch figures, and he's probably too tall to display with 3 3/4 inch figures. Even if I go and grab, say, a modern G.I. Joe, which are closer to 4 inches, I'm still going to guess they're not really to scale. Here he is next to Zartan, a 4-inch figure, and yeah, you can definitely see that this guy towers over him. So he's kind of a scale unto himself. So this guy's just going to kind of be displayed all by his lonesome in my collection, not really next to anything else. Now, it would have been nice if this figure was, say, a full 6 inches, because in the past couple of years, I've been building a little Conan collection from Super 7, and this would be a cool character to display next to them. This guy would also probably fit in nicely with my Mythic Legions collection that are also 6 inches. But unfortunately, nope, he's a little too small. I'm not sure how much he would have cost if he was 6 inches, because this guy was fairly expensive for what he is. So this figure was $40. And I don't hate that price. Like most 6-inch figures these days, like Marvel Legends and Star Wars Black Series, they're coming in anywhere between $30 and $35 before taxes now here in Canada. So this figure come in at $40. The fact that it's made by a very small company and I bought it from a specialty shop, $40 didn't seem unreasonable to me. However, once I opened this figure up, I started questioning that. And I don't keep a lot of my figures carded. You guys that watch my videos know that. There are a handful that I do keep carded. Sometimes I get a new figure that looks really cool on the card and I kind of wrestle with the idea for a while, but I almost always end up opening the figures. Death Dealer, he might have been a good figure to keep carded and just pinned up on the wall because he did look pretty nice. Like, he does look nice. When you get a close look at him here, like, he's not super detailed or anything, but, he doesn't look cheap. He looks like a pretty cool figure. And he still looks cool on display here. Like, I think he'll be, he'll look okay in my shelf, but it is a little discouraging that he doesn't really display next to anybody else. He's either going to look too large or too small next to whoever I display him next to. So you will see he came with a display base that's got the Fig Biz logo on there. It's a nice big display base, so it gives him a pretty solid base to stand on. He has a couple of accessories, and this is one of the problems I have with him. So first off, like, he's got this shield here. I think I had to pop his hand off maybe to get his wrist through there. But his sword and his axe, these are very soft weapons. Like, I think you can see the bend on this axe. And his hands are really rigid. So when I was trying to get the weapons in his hand, they were just like warping all over the place. Like, for an axe like this, I feel it should have a little bit more weight to it. I'd rather this was a harder piece of plastic and his hands were more pliable, that I could pry his fingers open. But instead, yeah, this thing was just getting all bent to hell when I was trying to get it in his hands. So he's got the shield, which has got, some nice little painted detail of a bird or something on there. The sword looks fine. The axe looks fine. Because it was a bit of a struggle to get them in his hand, they do stay there pretty solidly now. Like, I can pick him up by the axe, but it does warp. The other thing he has is this cape, I guess we'll call it. But this is not attached to him in any way. It just kind of rests on his shoulders, which I don't love. Like, it's okay when he's just being posed for display, but if you were like playing with him at all, this thing could probably very easily fall off. It would have been nice if that pegged into place somewhere. Another thing that I found kind of weird is you'll notice he has a sheath or scabbard or whatever for his sword, and it plugs into his belt. There's a little hole there on the belt, and there's a little plug on the side of this thing. And I thought I could display his sword in there, but this thing actually doesn't have a hole in it. I know it might be hard for you to see. Like, it's got a little indent, so it looks like it has a hole, but then that's solid throughout there. So you cannot put the sword in there. So that's really just for show. Let me see if I can get this back in here. The articulation. So the shoulder pads here, the pauldrons, they kind of limit his shoulders. So he does have a ball jointed shoulder, so it should move good, but that blocks it, so he can barely lift his arms up. He's got a single jointed elbow with pins. I know I said I took his hand off, but I don't think I did actually, because now I'm realizing he doesn't have any wrist articulation. So I think I just had to kind of stretch that shield thing over his hand. And see, as I'm holding him, his cape keeps falling off here. So yeah, the arms, not a whole lot of movement. The head's on a ball joint, so that can move around pretty good. He's got some up and down. But here's the real big problem. His legs. So you can see he's actually got double jointed knees, which is, not super common for figures this small. So that's a step in the right direction. But this skirt piece that he's wearing, there are no slits in it. Like, not on the sides anywhere. So his legs are restricted in that, like, that's as far as his legs can bend. And, like, you can't, they can bend back a little bit, but, You can't get him in any sort of wide stance. You could never get him on a horse or anything. Like, I don't know why they didn't put a little slit in the side of that so you could spread his legs out for more action poses. He's stuck being very stiff. And it's just, it does not make for cool action poses. He can pretty much just stand there like he's posing for a photograph or something. So that's kind of a letdown. So I don't dislike this figure, and this is a character that I'm kind of like into right now because of his new comic book series. And so it was just good timing that this toy was produced. But this is basically a placeholder in my collection. I will be waiting for a better Death Dealer figure. Hopefully some other company produces one. Hopefully one at a full 6-inch scale. This one here is just, like I said, it looks okay, but it's really just a placeholder. It's nothing great. I don't really think it's worth the $40 I paid for it. I think they could have made it better with just a couple of simple little changes, like more articulation on the elbows, a slit on even just one side of the skirt so you could put one of his legs out and give him a little bit of a wider stance. I wish the weapons weren't so soft and pliable. I wish that his sword could fit into his sheath. I wish his cape pegged onto him somewhere so it would stay in place. So yeah, lots of problems with this little guy, but it's not bad. Okay, so you've seen my Death Dealer, you've seen my dinosaurs. I don't really have anything else related to my trip to tell you about, but some other odds and ends I have. In a recent video, I showed you that I got the Billy Joe Armstrong Funko Pop. I know some action figure people really hate Funko Pops, but I have a soft spot for them. I do own quite a lot of them. And being a music fan, I do enjoy when Funko Pop makes figurines of some of my favorite bands, Green Day being one of those. So they put out the 3 members of Green Day ages ago. Like, I pre-ordered them like a year and a half ago, if not longer. And I don't know what the deal is, but they have never come in stock. I ordered them from Big Bad Toy Store, and they're still showing on my pre-order list. So I found the drummer, Trey Cool, a while ago, like several months ago. So I bought him, and I canceled my pre-order, but I kept my pre-order for the other 2 characters, hoping they would come in soon. More recently, I found Billy Joe Armstrong, so I showed you that figure, and I canceled my pre-order for that one. And then I was hoping for the 3rd member of the band, Mike Dirnt. I was like, well, hopefully my pre-order comes in on that soon, because it'll be really annoying if I only end up with 2 members of this trio. Well, my friend Miguel was like, why don't you just order it on Amazon then? And I looked on Amazon, it was there for $10. So I was like, okay, yeah, why am I going to keep waiting for Big Bad Toy Store? So I ordered Mike Dirnt. So I have now completed my Green Day crew. So there's not a whole lot to say with these things, but we'll flip things around and we'll take a closer look at him as well. So here is Mike Dirnt inside the box. The boxes are the same for all the members of the band. So there you see Billy Joe and Trey, who I have reviewed for you previously. One thing that's kind of interesting to note is that the band, like all the figures are kind of based on the American Idiot music video, and yet the artwork here on the box is based off of the Dookie album, and those albums were several years apart. So it's not the most cohesive of things, but whatever. Okay, so I just opened Mike up for the first time, and I'm immediately annoyed. So Funko Pops, they don't always stand up so well. The original Funko Pops I never had any problem with because they used to all basically share the same body type. It was a big head and a small body, which is kind of a recipe for disaster for an action figure that might topple over. However, they used to all have like really little squatty bodies with like a wide stance, and all the figures were designed that way. And the way the body was sculpted, it pretty much ensured that the figures would stand upright. But in the last several years, they've improved the figures by giving them more unique body types, especially the women figures. They don't have these, buff little, squatty bodies anymore. The women often have very thin little legs and everything like that. which is great, except for the fact that these things don't stand up. Some of them are just fine, others not so much. It's very unpredictable. You never know what you're going to get. A lot of people keep their Funko Pops in their boxes, so maybe they don't even realize. But anyway, you see with like Billy Joe, he is standing up here just fine on his own. However, Billy Joe came with a display base. I'm not sure why and how they decide which figures will have a display base, but quite a lot of my figures, my Funko Pops, have a display base. It kind of looks like this. I didn't bother getting the display base out, but it's very similar to the one the Death Dealer came with. It's just a little clear plastic base with one little peg. And if you look on the bottom of Billy's feet, he has one hole in his foot. So this foot doesn't have one. He's got one here, though. So there's only one way to display him. You put that hole on the one peg, and that way he's got a nice little base and he won't fall over. Trey Cool, the drummer, same thing. He has got a little hole in his foot, and he came with a display base, so I could display him, because they don't have the most solid base. They're kind of, it doesn't take much to knock these guys over. If I did have them on my shelf, I know I would be endlessly annoyed because the slightest gust of wind or my cat walks past them and then they're going to fall over. With Mike here, he is very delicate. The reason I had him leaning against Trey there a second ago is because I was having a lot of trouble getting him to stand when I first took him out of the box. It's very topsy-turvy. And he did not come with a display base, and he doesn't have any holes in his feet. So I don't know how Funko determines this, but maybe in the factory they thought, you know what, the way he plays bass, he's got a wider stance than the other guys, so he won't fall over, so we're not going to put a hole in his feet, we're not going to give him a display bass, and yet he's just as wonky and unreliable as the other figures. I kind of understand it if they did it different for different lines, like maybe all the band guys had bases, but maybe the TV ones don't, or something like that. But I don't understand why you've got a trio of 3 guys in a band, 2 of them have display bases, the third one doesn't. Even if Funko was confident that this figure would always stand on its own and they weren't so sure about the other guys, just for consistency, for people that want to display these 3 figures together on their desk or on their shelf, you're going to have 2 of them with these round, clear bases under them, and then you've got another guy that doesn't. It's just frustratingly inconsistent, and I don't know why they would do that. And it doesn't help that he doesn't stay upright. And, some companies could probably make a fortune making generic display stands. That's what a lot of companies do for, say, G.I. Joes or Marvel Legends, because they don't come with display bases, but you can buy generic ones from a third party. But Funko, they don't even put holes in their figures' feet. So I either have to, buy a generic stand from somebody, and then I still have to drill the hole in the feet myself and, destroy my figure. Very frustrating. Anyway, as far as a review of the figure, there's not a whole lot to say. Like I said, this is supposed to look like the band from the American Idiot video. I think they pull that off pretty well from what I remember. I don't know if there's maybe variants of these guys available with green paint all over them, but it wouldn't surprise me. But I think this is what he was wearing in the video. Just a black tank top, black pants, the little wristbands, the hair. It looks like what Mike's hair was styled like in that video with the sideburns and the two-tone hair and everything. But this is one of those figures that, if I put this figure all alone on my desk, my coworkers would probably walk by and say, "Oh, I didn't know you liked Elvis." There's really nothing particularly distinguishing about Mike Dirnt. He is kind of the least interesting member of the band. I think with Billy Joe, the fact that he's got that spiky hair and the black around his eyes, that does look like Billy Joe. Trey, it's not super obvious. The drumsticks might help. I kind of wish he had green hair, as Trey often does have brightly colored hair. I think that would have helped distinguish him. But yeah, with Mike, he's usually the most kind of straight-laced member of the band, so I don't know if there's much more you could really do with it. So, just me as a completist, I kind of had to have him so I could have the full band. So I'm glad I finally have him. And now he's going to go get thrown on the back of a shelf somewhere. Okay, so I have one last thing to talk about. And this is kind of a weird one. this is a figure that I bought, I think, the day before I left on my trip to Toronto. And I was torn on buying this thing, but recently, me and Chad did a video where we talked about our 10 most wanted DC Multiverse figures from McFarlane Toys. I don't buy a whole lot of the DC Multiverse figures, but that is Chad's primary collection. So we kind of thought it might be fun to do a list like that. I'm a big fan of making lists. Every year on Facebook, I post my best movies of the year list, my best music released that year. I always do a best of toy list at the end of the year. So whether I share them with you or not, I like making lists just for the sake of making lists. Last year, me, my friend Miguel, my brother Doug, and my other friend Brandon, we shot a video. We talked on Skype and we recorded it about our 100 favorite movies. So we all made a list of 100 favorite movies, and then we took the data and we compiled it into kind of the top 100 list made up of the 4 of our lists combined. And we thought it'd be fun to maybe do a video to share with you guys. But by the time we were done talking about it, it was about 2 hours long, and I kind of realized you guys don't care about what me and my friends think are the top 100 movies of all time. So I ended up not posting. But after doing that video with Chad about the most wanted DC characters, it got me thinking, like, maybe me and Chad could do a video where we do our top 10 favorite, like, fictional characters or characters from movies, because that obviously wouldn't take nearly as long as doing a top 100, and we might get some interesting results. And I started thinking about that before I still haven't mentioned it to Chad yet, and I don't know if we'll ever actually do it. But I was kind of thinking, like, who would be my top 10 favorite fictional characters of all time? And I'm like, characters like Spider-Man, of course. Would it be, like, when it comes to Star Wars, my all-time favorite Star Wars figure is Walrus Man. But is it fair to say he's one of my favorite fictional characters? Because as far as the fiction goes, he didn't really do anything in the movies or anything. But anyway, as I was thinking about this list, one character that crossed my mind was Buzz Lightyear. I absolutely love the Toy Story movies. As a toy collector, they just really kind of hit home for me. Like Toy Story 2, almost even more so than Toy Story 1, because that was kind of about toy collecting. I love those movies, and I love all the characters in them, like Woody, Rex, Bo Peep, even, like, all the characters. They all bring something to those movies. I find them endlessly charming. I absolutely love them. Toy Story 1 and 2 were on my list of top 100 movies. I think Toy Story 2, or Toy Story, I don't know how high they ranked, I forget now, but they're probably in, like, my top 20 of all time. Love them. Anyway, I was in Walmart the other day, and I came across a section of figures that McFarlane has. I forget what it's called, but Disney Universe or something. And there was a Buzz Lightyear there. And so I bought this Buzz Lightyear figure, which is not something I typically would buy. And I hummed and hawed about it. Like, do I really need this in my collection? I don't know. But after I picked it up, and I couldn't believe how heavy it was. This thing it felt like a big, girthy, heavy action figure. And like I said, I love Buzz Lightyear. And I think if I hadn't had that kind of conversation in my head, literally the night or two before, where I was thinking, you know what? I think Buzz Lightyear might be one of my 10 favorite fictional characters of all time. And now all of a sudden I'm looking at this really cool action figure of him. I don't have any, like, Toy Story figures in my collection, really. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to buy this. And I do love it. So why don't we take a closer look at my new Buzz Lightyear? So here is a closer look at my McFarlane Buzz Lightyear. So in the time it took me to turn my camera around and get this set up, I decided to take a quick look and remind myself what this figure is all about. So the line that this figure comes from is Disney Mirrorverse, and I assumed it was based off of some sort of video game. Apparently it is. I don't think it's a super complicated video game. I just quickly read the Wikipedia, and it says, like, it's an RPG app. So it's probably just a game that people play on their phones or something. It's not something you buy on, Xbox or PlayStation, I don't think. And yeah, it contains a bunch of Disney characters all kind of mashed together. I assume kind of in a premise similar to Super Smash Brothers, where, Nintendo just kind of took all of its icons and mashed them together into a game that doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense. And that looks to be like what Mirrorverse is all about. The other figures in the line that I've seen are figures from Monsters, Inc., which kind of ties into Buzz Lightyear because they're both Pixar characters, but then there's also Jack Sparrow from the live-action Pirates of the Caribbean movies, which is kind of an odd character to pair with, Buzz Lightyear, but it looks like it's just a mishmash of random Disney characters. I don't think I would buy any other figures from the line. Even if they did, say, Woody. I know I just said I love all the characters from Toy Story, but I don't think Woody would really translate in the same way. Anyway. So just for scale, so this guy is in the 6-inch scale or so. So here he is next to a Marvel Legend again. So you can see he's right there with him. But this one is so much thicker. Spidey is very, small and spindly when compared to this guy. And if you haven't seen this figure in store and had a chance to pick it up, it just really is, it's heavy. I don't know if you can tell from just the sound they make, but yeah, this guy is a really heavy figure. I was really surprised by it. And he moves really well. McFarlane traditionally is not known for, its articulation. They were always the company that did the nice sculpting, but they basically made statues instead of action figures. But they've gotten way better in recent years. Their DC figures are quite nice as far as articulation goes. So, he's got his head turns. It's on a ball joint, so it does turn a little bit. It's a little stiff. His arms, good range of movement there. They go up on a ball joint. Elbows and wrists turn. He spins at the midsection there. He's kind of got a ball joint right here at the waist. His knees, he's got a nice little kind of ratchet at the knee, so good range there. The ankles have a rocker. He's got joints there at his legs. So, he can pose pretty much however you would need him to. And, yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised by this figure. And yeah, it's kind of hard to pinpoint what is so great about it. But the thing is, when the Toy Story movies came out, and Buzz Lightyear came out, and he was supposed to be the most popular toy, in the world of the movie, but he wasn't really based on any actual toy. And so it was a little bit, kind of meta that they started making toys based on the movie, and Buzz Lightyear became a super popular toy. But those toys, they looked like toys for children because that's what they were. The plastic was, nice and smooth. It didn't have much detail. They often had little light up action or voice commands, very childish stuff, which makes, again, perfect sense because Toy Story was a movie for children primarily, and the toys are made for children primarily. So I wasn't really interested in getting Toy Story figures as much as I loved the movie. And now there's a new Buzz Lightyear movie that came out. I haven't seen it yet, actually, and it seems like a lot of people haven't. There's something unappealing to me about seeing Buzz Lightyear as a real guy. I think the premise of the movie, even though he is still computer animated, he's animated more realistically, and I think he is supposed to kind of be the character that the toy would have been based on or something. And just adding that bit of realism to him kind of just turns me off. I liked the idea of Buzz Lightyear being a toy. And this figure is kind of the perfect middle ground. If that new Buzz Lightyear movie looked like this, I would have went and seen it on opening night. I saw all the other Toy Story movies on opening night. I adore them. And this here, it looks like a Buzz Lightyear action figure. It doesn't look like it's trying to be a real guy, but it feels like a toy made for adult collectors. Just the size of it, the detail of it, the kind of matte finish of it as opposed to, a shiny child's toy with a nice sheen on it. It just, I don't know, it's really cool. I just like it. It feels like an adult version of the Buzz Lightyear that I love. It's not screen accurate to the Toy Story movies because it's so much bigger and bulkier and more detailed. But, yeah, it's kind of like with modern day He-Man figures or G.I. Joes or Transformers. in your mind's eye, you're thinking like, oh yeah, I love these characters and I loved these toys when I was a kid. But then you often go back and you look at your childhood Transformers and you realized how clunky and stiff those toys were. And now companies like Hasbro are making really good versions of those toys you loved as a kid. And they're making them how you think you remember them. That's kind of what this Buzz Lightyear is like to me. Like, if I was a little kid when Toy Story came out, and I wasn't, I was like 20. If I had that toy as a kid and I remembered it fondly, and then this came out, I'd be like, yeah, this is like the toy I had as a kid. But it's not. It's bigger, it's better, it's more detailed, it's more articulated. It's just super cool. Now, as far as accessories go, it came with one little accessory here. Now, in the package, this back piece was actually separate, probably to, that way the box didn't have to be so thick. So this whole back piece was packaged separately. And at first, I didn't know what that was. I was like, is that a shield or something he comes with? But nope, you have to snap it together. And I don't know if I get it perfectly because there is a seam there. It seems to be holding together pretty well, but I do wonder if I needed to push that together a little tighter. Anyway, it came with these translucent blue wings, and they just kind of plug into the sides here. They don't, like, they hold in place okay, but they don't really, like, lock in place. But, yeah, that kind of gives them a cool flight effect. Yeah, let's see. Now, that's cool, but I do wish that these things folded up, which seems like it would have been an easy thing for McFarlane to do, for these wings to, like, say, tuck in like this, and then have them pop out. Because in that case, then I could keep them, on him at all times. But as it is, for me to have to clip his wings in like this, it makes them very wide on the shelf and takes up a lot of room. So I'm probably going to take these off of him and put them in my spare parts bin, never to see them again. Now, the only thing that's missing from this figure that I think would really make it perfect is if he had a removable glass dome, that covered this whole area here. I think that would be really cool to have that snap in place. I don't even care if, you could slide the front off and all that sort of stuff. That would all be a bonus. But I just think having the option to put a glass dome over the top would be great. I don't know why they didn't. Maybe it's because it's based on that game, and in the game he doesn't have a dome. I don't know. I'm just noticing here he's got toe articulation too, so his toes can go up like that. So, very cool. But yeah, a great figure. I don't know. I love this thing. So, very, very cool. Okay, so that is the last figure I'm going to show you today in this kind of catch-all episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you didn't mind sitting through my little recap of my Toronto adventure. Hopefully you found it interesting. If you did, leave me comments below. Make sure to hit the like and the subscribe button. And yeah, is there anything else? Nope. Like, subscribe, comment. That pretty much covers it. So I'll be back soon with another video. Hopefully I'll see you then. So until then, ciao.